If I was Narendra Modi, I should be giving an interview to Rajdeep Sardesai.
In the book, you've given it.
Rahul Gandhi is more some kind of a political philosopher, ideologue, and not a strategist.
I'm not suggesting EVMs are hacked.
Do you tone yourself down on TV given the atmosphere that's happened?
Yeah, I was part of the problem, not the solution. The McDonaldization of news. Anyone who questions the government is or raises the inconvenient questions is branded anti-national. Twitter is the most vicious ecosystem because you can have anonymity or you can act in packs. Of what I call WMD now, weapons of mass / media destruction.
Do we as Indian citizens value democracy enough? It's a question I ask myself.
It's been exhausting. It's been exhausting.
Hi, you're watching Scroll with me, Shoaib Daniyal, and I'm joined by one of India's most well-known journalists, Rajdeep Sardesai, where we'll be discussing his new book on the 2024 elections. Hi, Rajdeep.
Hi Shoaib, thank you very much for joining me, and let me put the book in front of the camera. It's because I like this picture.
It's a nice photo, yeah.
It's a nice photo. The difference is the first two books that I had, 2014 and 19, had Modi and Rahul in 2014,
Right.
Modi and Amit Shah in 2019. Now it's got an Indian voter and a woman voter at that. So I think that's great.
Which is almost the message of the Maharashtra elections right now, right?
It's the message. I think it's the message of India.
Yeah.
Maharashtra was one example of it. Not just, Maharashtra was possibly the woman voter, as you said, but in general, I think that elections increasingly, it's the voter who's surprising us. We saw it in the Lok Sabha. When the opposition appeared down and out, suddenly the Indian voter decides to have his or her say. We saw it to some extent in Haryana and in Maharashtra. We talk a lot about elections being managed. That could be one aspect of the so-called election management. Mm-hmm. But I think the mahal is now increasingly uncertain. It's the voter who's...
Did 24 surprise you? The election result?
Oh, absolutely. In the sense that, Shoaib, in my last... I did a interview with News Tak and I said BJP will get around 280. I said there are three scenarios, but the most likely one is BJP around 280 and the NDA around 300 plus. They got 240 and NDA ended up less than 300. So I think the scale of the BJP, what surprised me was Uttar Pradesh above all else in the general elections.
They lost even the Ayodhya seat, yeah.
Ayodhya and Uttar Pradesh in general, would they end up behind the Samajwadi Party? That seemed difficult to believe. So that was the big surprise of Lok Sabha was UP specifically. The big surprise for me, the biggest surprise of this year was Haryana.
Right.
Traveling through Haryana, I could sense anti-incumbency. You sometimes sense palpable anti-incumbency, and it was there. Now, if you lose that election, it requires a huge examination of how elections can be managed. The last stretch can be managed. Maharashtra, I expected after my travels, the Mahayuti I felt was ahead because of the woman voter, primarily, among other factors. Mm-hmm. But I didn't expect the scale of the Mahayuti.
When you say managed, are you meaning something more? Do you think elections are not completely free and fair anymore?
Look, two parts to that. When I say managed, I mean the ability to do the last mile micro planning.
Right.
Right,
the BJP does very well.
Masters it at the booth level. When you look at Maharashtra, the way in which they targeted specific booths, they had a plan for each specific booth area and implemented that plan. That's, the management is really that level of micro planning. I'm not suggesting EVMs are hacked. I have no evidence of it. I would like to trust people who are far superior to me in technology when they say that EVMs are standalone machines. Tough to hack them unless you can replace them, unless you can bring in an external factor into that. So I need more evidence for anyone to tell me EVMs can be hacked. But
what about more boring things like managing rolls, money, etc., etc.?
So that's where we come to your point of a free and fair election.
Right.
Voter lists, huge concerns over the way they are. Voters being added, voters being deleted, should be a matter of huge concern, and the Election Commission needs to come clear on how are they going about that process. Money, power, huge. I don't think we've seen as much of money in a Maharashtra election like we've seen this time. I know sarpanches who say, sir, amala I mean, they're just astounded by the scale of monies that were doing the rounds in villages in certain parts of Maharashtra. So money power has become huge. It ends up distorting the election and ensuring it's not free and fair. How is it free and fair if one side has X amount of money and the other side has 100X?
Yeah, right.
How is it free and fair if one side has complete control over the state machinery and the other side does not? How is it free and fair if the media, by and large, is constantly bombarding you with the messages of one side? And when I say media, I mean multimedia, social media, WhatsApp groups, the entire works. So, with the aid of technology, with the aid of money and resources. So, I think it's like a lime and spoon race now,
Right.
where it's a 50-meter run, where one side is at 40 meters at the start, the other is starting off.
Right.
So, free and fair needs redefinition. When I say elections are no longer free and fair, or are increasingly not free and fair, let me rephrase that. It's because I think the entire ecosystem of the election is heavily skewed in favor of one side. That's the problem that I have. It is not a level playing field. So the better word, rather than say, is it free? I would say it is not a level playing field. And even the Lok Sabha. I mean, imagine the largest party, opposition party in the country gets an income tax notice in March for a 1993 accounts matter. Your accounts are being frozen. Half the time you're spending in trying to get your money out of your bank accounts. You have a complete media monopoly on one side. You have the election commission is by and large non-transparent. The calendar of the election seems to be designed to suit one side. I mean, these are all serious questions. The election commission doesn't enforce its code of conduct or enforces it selectively. The enforcement agencies act against one side, whether it's arresting chief ministers before an election or sending notices to different opposition functionaries. It's not easy being an opposition politician in India at the moment.
You mentioned media twice. So, you've been in the media since the late 80s, Times of India, then NDTV and so on. So you've really you've been right in the center of it, the heart of it. Tell us about what media was like back in the day. Like, what was it like in the 80s and the 90s, and how does it compare to today?
One of the reasons I readily accepted to come to Scroll was because it's edited by an old friend from that era.
Right.
Quite apart from Scroll being a wonderful initiative, the fact that Naresh Fernandez is your editor, because he's part of my past. He joined Times of India, I think, a year or two after I did.
Right.
I joined in '88, and it was a much more quieter. I don't want to use the word innocent, but more quieter world. Certainly, there was no breaking news, no noise of breaking news. We worked on a typewriter, came back, wrote your article on typewriter, corrected on a typewriter, then rewritten on that typewriter. Right. When the computer first came, I think in '89 or '90 to the Times of India office, we did a pen down strike. I mean, we meaning the union. The union insisted. Right. I was not part of the union, but the union insisted all of us go on a pen down strike because we feared computers would take away jobs. Bit like what is happening with AI now. Right. Everybody fears AI will take away jobs. So I come from that era where you could sort of take a nice long lunch break. Times of India was wonderful because in and around were these lovely little restaurants, not too expensive. Best keema pav you got was in the police canteen.
Right.
And it also helped you make friends with the police guys who take you there. So that's why I said it's quieter, innocent in a way. And then TV happens in '94 and changes the rules of the game. Then you have all this breaking news and more noise. Initially, I think there was more space for news gathering even on TV. But once competition starts, once TRP pressures start, all of that starts changing in the 21st century. It's more T20 style journalism that comes along with that, becomes more what I call the McDonaldization of news,
right,
where today's news is tomorrow's history. And so I've seen that. I've seen as I said, from the typewriter to the mobile.
We'll discuss. So many people say it's like, obviously there are many negative discuss of this. There must be some positives in this change, right?
Oh yeah, hugely. I'll tell you one big positive with an anecdote. 1993, Latur earthquake.
Right.
Because it was, there was no mobile, no OB vans, nothing.
Right.
Covering that was a nightmare because you had to reach there, you had to make sure that you were able to report what had happened in Killari, which was the village where thousands of people had died, all communication broken down. By the time you actually got the visuals and the story, it was a few days after the earthquake had hit. So the magnitude of what had happened was never really understood by the rest of the country. Today, some guy sitting in Killari will be doing FaceTime or will be doing videos out there. So I think technology has brought the world closer together. It's made news more accessible than ever before. So you have more information than ever before. Now that's at one level a positive. You can't, there's no place to hide. There's no place to hide in. I've often thought about this, and since we are in the week almost of when the Babri Masjid was demolished, I still remember it was a Sunday. I was at the Times of India office. And it took a long while for us to process what had happened because there were no images, right? And therefore the government of the day also could get away by saying we don't know what's really happening in Ayodhya. Imagine today you'd have probably a journalist on the dome, even before the car sevaks reached there, reporting there with a mic. I can see what's happening.
I mean, he might have a pickaxe too.
Well. I hope not. I hope not. But look, that's the worry. That's that was then. So I do believe, therefore, that there is no place to hide. And that's the big positive of today's multimedia age. Everyone out there is a citizen journalist in some form or the other. He's got a mic in hand or a mobile in hand, and he can transfer.
So we are forced also to do our jobs even better than before. Basically, there's a lot of pressure.
There is, but that's the positive. The negative is that it's also led, as I said, to the McDonaldization of news, where everything is fast food. Today's news is tomorrow's history. No sense of remembrance, of
contextualization.
No sense of contextualization, and you're just hurtling from one story to the other, which is why books are important. I mean, one of the reasons I've written 3 on these elections, but with every book it's become more and more difficult because I get older, and books require a lot of discipline. But I think they are important to do only to set the context, to give the backstories, to tell what really happened, so that people 20 years from now know what happened, for example, during COVID 2.0. Because otherwise it seems to just have been forgotten and we moved on.
Yeah.
I mean, the numerous mistakes of misgovernance need to be told to this country, just as a pure reporter. So that's...
Coming back to the media, I want to again tap you as an insider. You've seen the rise of Godi media, and you've written about it in your book too. How does it happen? Where does it start? I mean, when you started in NDTV, there wasn't anything like it, and then now today it's almost all Godi media.
Look, Shoaib, let's be honest. It's not as if the world before was some perfect world and only Godi media has arrived post 2014.
Right.
Even pre 2014, journalists had their own firm ideological convictions. But they were primarily reserved for the opinion pages. When I joined the Times of India, it was a very vibrant edit page with writers who were either left, right, center, all of whom would express themselves freely. In that sense, the newsroom was far more democratic, allowed different viewpoints to be expressed, not just one. So you could have a Swapan Das Gupta, you could have an Arvind Das, you could have a Chandan Mitra, Dilip Padgaonkar, Achin Vanaik, Praful Bidwai. I'm just throwing names of people who are excellent opinion writers. And, to squeeze into that space for me was a huge achievement in those days.
Swapan Das was a Trotskyite at that time, right?
No, this was after his trial. By then Swapan Das Gupta had discovered the Hindutva right.
Right.
And you had Arvind Das and him vigorously debating. But it was, you had space for both points of view.
Yeah.
Today you look at the Times of India's opinion pages. I mean, you have politicians writing on them, not real opinion writers. And it's all condensed form without any real punchy arguments being made. It's a huge difference from those days when you had solid political writing in particular on that page. The Godi media, therefore, I think is something which there were, as I said, always journalists who took sides, perhaps in terms of their ideological beliefs, who were either seen to be aligned with the government or critical of the government. But now it's normalized to the extent where anyone who questions the government is or raises the inconvenient questions is branded anti-national. That was not the case. You could be a dissenter, you could have an alternative viewpoint, and you could have a dialogue. As I said, all these writers would have a fierce edit page meeting before they went on to the edit page. No one called each other anti-national. No one, suggested that because you've got a different viewpoint or you're critical of the government, you're anti-national. That's what's the polarization has reached. Now then you could have partisanship. Now it's hyper-polarization. Hyper-polarization to the point where there is no dialogue, where one side doesn't want to reach out to the other, where either you're branded Godi or Darbari, and there's no space for, as a result, any kind of reasoned, rational debate. And that's the big change that's taken place. And those who are aligned to a particular side, now have lost the basic kernel of journalism, which is speaking truth to power. Instead, because of the rise of access journalism, you're constantly aligning yourself to power. I mean, our job was not to align ourselves to power, but to speak truth to power. Even between 2009 and 14, when the UPA was in power in second term, look at the severe criticism that all of us across the board gave the Manmohan Singh government. I mean, and I don't recall people from the Manmohan Singh government ringing me up and telling me, don't run this, don't run that, stop this. In fact, they almost ceded the prime time space to news channels in those days. One story after the other, they were being hit from left, right, center. Today, I mean, that's not happening anymore. Today, the narrative is very tightly controlled.
It almost seems like Mr. Modi has learnt from that debacle and he's really put a lot of effort into managing the media. You've spoken about the Hiren Joshi model. You think that's the thing?
No. Look, as I say in the book, and it was not easy for me as being part of the media to write about myself. I'm not trying to claim I'm out of it. I'm part of that media. But I start with a quote that Mr. Modi gave the BBC then, which was that when he was asked what was the one thing that you would have done differently or what was the one mistake you made during 2002, I failed to manage the media. So I think they've learned from that and course corrected and gone out of the way to ensure the management of the media. Now, I'm not saying that previous media managers didn't do that or prime ministers. Every prime minister's media person tries to ensure that he or she can control the narrative for the leader. But I think it's reached a level where it is so tightly controlled that the space to question and criticize and even analyze at times is shrinking.
And do you think, so we've all discussed this top-down thing, but do you think this hate and communalism that so many TV channels do, does it sell? Like, is there a market for it? Is there a bottom-up driver also? It's a tough question, I know. But
I think so. Let's put it in some context again. Since you mentioned nostalgia, when I joined journalism in 1988-89, ironically, it's around the same time that you see the rise of Hindutva politics. That's the same period. And I remember there used to be a slogan, "Jo Hindu hit ki baat karega, wahi desh pe raj karega." And I remember once sitting in the newsroom reflecting with friends. I say, no, is this the kind of politics that we are going to see? People say, no, wo to fringe ka hai. Ye to koi bol leta hai, aisa hi. Now that fringe has become mainstream. That fringe has got normalized. And the media has played an important role in that. So is it about TRPs? Is it coming from bottom up? Maybe it is. But, are we going to make that an excuse to normalize what should be seen as anti-constitutional hate politics? Right? Our job as media persons, yes, is to report and observe, but our job as media journalists is also to ensure that we adhere to one holy book for us, which should be the Constitution of India. Now, are we going to allow, in the name of bottom-up sort of forces expressing themselves in this way, to thereby normalize that kind of "Jo Hindu hit ki baat karega"? Now it's batoge to. It's only the slogan that's changed, but the mindset is still the same. Divide, look for an enemy, target that enemy, and then consolidate your vote based on that. That's reached a level which is scary. And a large section of the media has played a very pernicious role. Added, of course, to social media and the other weapons that are now available, to what I call WMD now, weapons of mass/media destruction, played an important role in normalizing that kind of language. And yes, voters have also embraced it. Voters have accepted it. Let's not kid ourselves. Voters, I mean, if you do a program which perhaps has a Muslim cleric and a Hindu Pandit fighting each other and screaming.
Sometimes literally. So
Yeah, it may attract more eyeballs, no doubt about it. A farmer's suicide in Maharashtra will attract less eyeballs than a Hindu-Muslim conflict on a television screen near you. These are serious questions that, as media practitioners, we need to sort of reflect upon. I mentioned in the book that horrific incident of a railway police constable last year, I think, shooting or going on a shooting spree in a railway compartment looking to identify Muslims by the way they looked. And then when he was asked why he did it, he said, "Oh, to media wale keh rahe hain, ye to sab Pakistan se aa rahe hain," or something to that effect. All of this is very worrying. And social media now amplifies it or drives it even further. So, the news comes on social media, some kind of video plays out there. Next thing you know, the video has been picked up and becomes part of a television debate. And therefore, the noise levels and the amplification goes on. So, I think all of this should be deeply, deeply worrying and concerning for anyone who's a media practitioner. And I'm concerned about it. As I said, when I wrote the chapter, I recognized that, I was part of the problem, not the solution. I'm not trying to say I'm offering a solution, but I think it's important at least to report it as honestly as possible, and that's what I've tried to do.
in fact, to press you a little bit on that, so when I read the book, I actually found the book quite insightful. I found the book very frank, and I almost saw there were two Rajdeeps. There's a book Rajdeep in the book and the Rajdeep on TV. Do you tone yourself down on TV given the atmosphere that's happened?
Yeah. Look, let me again take refuge in history since you started with nostalgia. I come from an age where, for me, I remember my first editor, Darren, I think it was Girilal Jain was editor, but Dilip Padgaonkar and Darren De Monte I reported directly to, saying if you have opinions, keep them for the opinion page. Right. If you have news, report it on the news. In some way, I'm still old school in that sense. So maybe that old school mantra reflects, I believe both sides must have equal time to speak, right. Which may make my debate perhaps seen as, what did you say, toned down or neutral or whatever, right. I don't think you can ever be neutral, but that you can be objective but not neutral. But I come from that school which believed that everyone had equal space to speak out. I didn't try and blank out someone simply because I may not agree with their views. That's why I am troubled with this whole Godi Darbari sort of battle also. I don't want to be part of either. I just want to find some space between these two poles. Now you want to call that toned down, that's fine. But in the book, as I said...
In the book you've given it.
No, in the book...
Nobody's going to read such a fat book, I think you've assumed, other than me.
No, people are reading it. I mean, you look at the numbers. Right. Kitab Khana has run out of copies within 48 hours, right? And that's Mumbai, which I thought is a city where, people don't read. No, it's fat book, thin book. I come, again, let me take refuge in history. The first election that I remember, general election, was 1977. I was 12 years old. Right. But I just was very excited about all these names.
It's a historic election to remember, right?
Yeah, but I was this mad kid who, apart from playing cricket, was obsessed with news. So I used to remember Raj Narayan. I remember cutting there, having a little, what do you call those? A little scrapbook with all the headlines and all that. So the day Indira Gandhi lost, I remember running to my mom, Indira Gandhi lost in the... I don't know whether it was on radio or the newspaper. I think newspaper had come in. But the night before, maybe it was on radio. But I was excited. I went to school, told everybody. But there are no real books written on how did it all happen. I mean, there was Janardhan Thakur and Kuldeep Nair, but they weren't writing really about the nitty-gritty of how the election was planned. So my job, and I want people 20 years from now, whether it's 500 pages or 100 pages, to at least have the opportunity to know what happened this has been one of the most turbulent decades in Indian politics. And this book is not just about an election, it goes back into the last 5 years. The previous books went into the previous 5. So you're looking at 15 years of India, which have seen a dramatic change in this country. This country is almost unrecognizable from the country that I grew up in as a student and then a journalist. I mean, when I look at where I started in 88 and where have we come in 2024, it's Zameen Asman. And I just try and document it. Maybe, as you're now suggesting, I'm being more honest in it, good. I mean, if books are not honest, see, TV shows TV show, there's a bit always of, occasionally you could accuse someone of play acting, you will accuse someone of playing to the camera. The good thing about a book, none of that exists. So when I'm writing a book, I'm not thinking, kitne log padhenge. I'm thinking, am I being honest to myself? And that's why I wrote the media chapter in the end. I initially thought, yaar, chhod dete hain. Because if you point one finger at someone, they'll point 4 fingers at you. But I said, look, this is the reality. And I've sort of expressed it in a way that is a way a reporter should. Things like the NDTV takeover, the things like the way the media is managed by people at the highest level in government, the rise of digital media. All of this is part of the way journalists have been arrested, the NewsClick episode, the way sedition charges were filed against me. I mean, all of this needs to be told. The rest is for readers to judge. I hope people both right, left and center read it, rather than pigeonholing someone in some way.
You spoke about sedition. I think in your book you mentioned that the Modi government had you in its sights.
Yeah.
So how does it, I think this is uncontested fact, left and right, that you are not liked by the current dispensation. So how has it been in the last 10 years for you? Has it been tough? Has it been, because it does constrict the space of a journalist to just do his or her job, right?
It's been exhausting. It's been exhausting because, again, as I repeat, I come from a school of journalism which didn't really think that we would have intolerance levels to the point of either an official or unofficial boycott of journalists. मैं इसके साथ interview नहीं दूंगा, मैं इसको नहीं दूंगा. I will only give interviews.
And that's happened with you.
That's happened. I mean, that's happened. That specific individuals.
Could you give me some examples?
No, I don't want to give
examples. Who boycotted you?
No. Look, the fact is that it is more and more difficult for journalists who question the government to really do hard questioning of the government to get those kind of interviews with government.
Right.
It is also true that the Congress party has officially boycotted certain journalists. All of that is, I think, unfortunate.
And the Congress seems to have boycotted the media itself. They think that they want to directly connect with.
Yeah, so all of it, I mean, it doesn't lead to a healthy democracy. A healthy democracy is not built around boycotts of journalists. I can understand, your concern that particular journalists may you believe are biased, but this bias bias lies in the eyes of the beholder. You don't like my questions, I become biased. You like my questions, I'm neutral. I mean, that's not the way. I just read the LA Times is now starting a bias meter. So it's not just an Indian problem, it's a global problem, right? We've seen it in the Trump election.
In fact, I think the US is far more polarized.
Yeah,
right?
so I mean, the polarization, the us versus them in newsrooms has created a very, very difficult situation for practicing journalists. I just want to tell stories. You said who was, I knew Prime Minister Modi well at one time in another avatar, in another age. In fact, going back in nostalgia to 1990 and the Rath Yatra. But I guess, he would be reluctant to give me an interview, which is a pity because I think that interview will break the internet. If I was Narendra Modi, I should be giving an interview to Rajdeep Sardesai rather than many of the people he does. Because the moment you give them, people think, theek hai. Always challenge yourself. I mean, whether I'm a politician, that's the difference. I think the politicians, Bal Thackeray and I, to again go back in time, he was one of the first big national leaders in a way that I interviewed because I was in Mumbai at the time. And I'd go I'd interview him very regularly. He didn't approve of many of the things I said about the Shiv Sena. I went for the Shiv Sena, for example, when they dug up a cricket pitch in Mumbai. I was angry. It reflected in my writings. I was allowed to write an opinion piece.
When Pakistan was coming to play in Bombay.
When Pakistan was coming to play in Bombay, it was the early 90s. But it didn't stop Bal Thackeray from giving me an interview. In fact, I think he relished the idea that I'm giving an interview and gave it as good as he got. I mean, it was print, not TV, but it would have made great TV viewing. I mean, I think politicians have also become so intolerant as a society. I guess someone will say, I won't read your... The other day, someone walked out of a book talk that I was having.
Right.
Saying, an elderly lady, saying, I don't want to... you're completely biased. I want to walk out of this. I don't want to listen to you. Fortunately, there were 8 others who said, please, we want to listen to him. So here is, and this was in a polite, club-like atmosphere. Where you would expect people would be ready to listen to each other. But this is the level that we've reached, even in so-called polite society. where you don't want to hear certain inconvenient truths. You don't want to hear about, how the politics of communal polarization has divided society. You don't want to hear that. Instead, you want to hear about what do you have to say about Hindus in Bangladesh? Okay, we'll talk about that too. I have no problem talking about that. But my book isn't about Hindus in Bangladesh. If I wrote a book on Bangladesh, we'll talk about that. But this is how the entire discourse has got skewed. I mean, I remember soon after when after I reported on 2002.
Did somebody troll you with this Bangladesh line on Twitter?
I don't remember now whether they must have, but I'm saying this happened
There's something that I want to you when you speak about difficulties, and I think all journalists will stick to that. There's the government, but there's also trolling. There's also this immense sort of outpouring of criticism. I put it very mildly. How is your experience? You've been at the receiving end of a lot of it in the last decade.
Initially, I didn't take it that seriously. I thought these are all discordant voices. They don't really matter. Just do what you have to do. I was on Twitter. I have my own views. I express themselves. The problem is now I've realized that this trolling is not an innocent trolling anymore. It is part of a larger design to intimidate, to spread fear, and particularly when governments live and die by Twitter.
So you think it's controlled? Is that what you're saying?
No, of course there are.
Of
course there are IT armies out there.
Right.
I don't know how they work and operate. That is something that deserves even more attention. But they're out there, and they're out to take you down. I mentioned in my book. How the BJP IT cell chief sends me WhatsApp. I'm going to take you down. When are you going to retire? I mean, or prevented me from getting an interview which Amit Shah had agreed to.
Right.
During the Bengal elections of 2021.
This is Amit Malviya.
You named him. I didn't. Look, and that's what has left me. As I said, I come from a generation of journalists who you could have politicians who may not agree with you, but you could still converse with them. Now it's not possible. Because you have created this spiteful world using social media and your armies to target individuals to take them down. Right? I mean, that is where this troll machine becomes pernicious of a kind that I guess I was hoping that it wouldn't be quite like that. I mean, I was hoping this is just something that happens on the side. But even that's got mainstreamed. And television channels take sometimes the cue from what's happening on Twitter, what's trending on Twitter.
So many times,
the hashtags. I mean, I'll give you the example. Remember during COVID, this whole Tablighi Jamaat, this whole thing of Corona Jihad. And as I write in the book, a year later, when the Kumbh Mela resulted was just before COVID 2.0, didn't observe any rules of social distancing promoted by a state government. Nobody called them Corona Jihad. Nobody said Corona carriers or.
And you think this viciousness was actually led by Twitter and then picked up by TV?
Absolutely.
Right.
Twitter is the most vicious ecosystem because you can have anonymity or you can act in packs. You and I on television or in print or in digital, when we are putting our name to a byline, we are effectively responsible legally for what we write or say. Right? The guy sitting on Twitter can say what he wants about me, and I'm now told by people don't respond because if you respond, it becomes a bigger controversy. And here I am saying, but that's not true.
Right.
You're spreading fake news. I mean, this fake news industry has reached the point where it's exploded, not just India, across the world. And it's been used and manipulated by political figures and parties to spread misinformation and disinformation in real time. I think that's the other big difference, right? In the past, we had a pause button where we had actual editorial filters and controls. Do we have the same anymore? No.
Are you thinking of retiring, Rajdeep? Are you tired? You had a fantastic innings.
I should speak like Atal Bihari Vajpayee, not tired, not retired. But look, I've just taken a bit of a sabbatical after the Maharashtra elections. I've had a tough 14 months in particular, and it's been a sort of pretty tumultuous decade. India Today has been very kind enough to give me this 2 months sabbatical, and actually, to be fair, they've given me the space to be myself for the most part over the last 10 years. Can't be easy, but still they have, and I need to respect that.
Do you think India would have like a left-right model? You were the left and some other
I,
anchors were the right?
No, I look, I don't see myself as left. Far from it, actually. But I think it's been a relatively democratic newsroom in terms of the fact that you can voice your opinion. I've never been stopped from speaking my mind out, which is reassuring in a big way. But I don't know what the future holds. I've taken this 2-month sabbatical because I just needed a little bit of a break, both health-wise and also to promote the book and maybe watch a bit of cricket between India and Australia. So I can that's my passion in life. The book has been a project which is dear to me, and I need to get my health. I have a few health issues that I need to sort out.
If you could go back to being, you've played cricket at a pretty high level. Would you want to go back to cricket as a career instead of journalism?
Look, the difference is, I keep saying this, and I say it only, I don't say it in jest at all. Cricket needs talent.
Right.
When you're not talented in anything, there's always journalism. I should have been a lawyer.
You're talking like a troll now, Rajdeep.
No. Honestly, I'm being honest. I was trained to be a lawyer. I spent my first 3 months at the Bombay High Court. Every time I go past that area, I get nostalgia. I said, shit, man, I should have stayed the course. Friends of mine are making tons of money as top lawyers. So that didn't happen. Cricket was a passion, but cricket was genuinely, I keep saying this, it's one area where nepotism doesn't work. My father was a test cricketer and a very good, the first Indian to score an overseas double century. But I was not good enough. And he would keep telling me, I cannot go on the crease and score runs for you.
Right.
And that's the big difference. And that's true of even today's cricketers. Arjun Tendulkar may have the most famous surname in Indian cricket, but he's going to have to prove himself on the ground. And therefore, I missed there's an over 55 tournament in Mumbai next month.
Right.
So that's among the things to do. I'm trying to learn pickleball, which is a game meant for 60 plus guys. And I'm trying to get back to playing the game, which I love so much.
I think I saw an ad on Panchil Park. Is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah, pickleball. Right?
There's a pickleball. Yeah, it's a game basically for indolent old men who still want to pretend that they are exercising.
This is a weird. How did you decide to become a journalist? And you did cricket, lawyer, everything. Like, why did you choose this?
Because as I told you, I had this news news kida from ever since I can remember. I remember 1976, Gerald Ford versus Jimmy Carter, 11-year-old, sitting all day in USIS, looking, there was no live TV.
News junkie back then also.
Crazy. Crazy in a manner that, I was this GK. The only good thing that I was really good at as a kid was a GK.
Right.
I was probably one of the youngest winners of the Bonvita quiz contest. And this was the real, genuine Bonvita quiz contest, not what you see now. This was on radio with Amin Sani, earlier Hamid Sani, asking you questions in a small room. And it was serious stuff. So I had this one kida in me. Cricket was, of course, kida number one. But that required talent. I got bowled once for a match against Pakistan for combined universities, and that was it. Bowled by Kadir. I said, got to do something here. Law was a passion. Law was something also which was a kida number 3. I sometimes, as I said, look at lawyers and feel shit, man. I should have been there. I could debate maybe in front of Chandrachud.
Paisa zyada.
Paisa, right to life and liberty. Let's debate what's right to life and liberty. Does a journalist get bail on a Saturday from a judge sitting as a vacation judge, and you won't give it to let's say many others like Umar Khalid or someone else will have to struggle for a lifetime to probably get bail. So I would have liked to raise those issues, debate those issues, but then the news kida I think overwhelmed all else at that time. Plus the Times of India was paying me the principal sum of $850 I think at the start, while as an advocate's assistant I was getting.
Right.
So I thought, $850 over zero at that stage in life for a variety of reasons mattered.
I think there's something that I still see my lawyer friends agitating about, that I think when you start off at law, you get no money at all, right?
So you see, that was what I was told. I said, first 10 years you'll get nothing. Next 10 years the sky is the limit. Right. I didn't wait those 10 years. Had I waited, who knows? But look, I've enjoyed it. I've been very lucky, Shoaib, that I've been in a period of India from 88 to 2024. Where so much has happened. In fact, when I joined journalism, I said I'd do it for a year and then go back to the law.
I think after 47, this might be India's most impactful period.
Oh, absolutely. Just think about it. 90s was politically turbulent between the Mandal Mandir agitations that took place. Mumbai, I mean, you're talking about nostalgia, the toughest period of journalism, and Naresh Fernandez, your editor, will recall this well. We put a book together when Bombay burnt, was the riots of 92 and 93, the blasts, and what it did to a city. It scarred the city forever. And then you come back and see what's happening in North India. And I was there in North India. I'd moved by then to Delhi when I saw elections in UP.
You moved to Delhi in 94.
94.
With NDTV.
That's right. And then you see Mayawati becoming chief minister, the famous guest house incident,
Right.
and UP politics in turbulence. I go to Bihar and I see the rise of Lalu Prasad. I mean, it was heady. It was not, and governments were falling and being formed. And that's a good time for journalists. You see, when governments are falling, you know, all the drama going on in one bungalow to the other, rushing around, kaun banega prime minister. I mean, who could have thought I.K. Gujral sitting one day in India International Center peacefully, next day becomes prime minister. It was a turbulent decade. Vajpayee, the rise of the BJP, the decline of the Congress. We saw all that in that decade. Then you come to the decade of 2000, Sonia Gandhi suddenly deciding not to become prime minister, Manmohan Singh coming out of virtually nowhere. Liberalization, of course, all the time gathering speed, the economy changing dramatically, and then you have the rise of Modi. I mean, you know, if you think about it, it's been like someone said, I've been on a moving. Maybe someone told me, but I've picked it up. I've been on a moving train where someone's taken off the brakes don't exist. So for 35 years, you've been on a moving train, not knowing what's going to happen next. So this is the first time I've actually got at least hold of that brake for 2 months. I mean, otherwise it's been relentless and it's been fun. I mean, I'm not cribbing at all. I think today's journalists perhaps don't, you know, because of the kind of ecosystem that's been created, don't have that kind of opportunity I was lucky to have. I mentioned some of these edit page writers. I used to sit in an editorial. I used to just sit silently and listen to them. And they all thought they were running the country. That's another matter. It's very interesting. During Ayodhya, during 93.
Journalists can be a bit big-headed.
Yeah, of course. You know, we think we're the most important people in the world. But in that period, 93, 2 books were to be written. One on Ayodhya and one on Mumbai Blast.
Right.
The Mumbai Blast was written by us reporters there. The Delhi one was to be written by the big editors in Delhi on Ayodhya.
Right.
That book never came out, ours did. It tells you a lot. Reporters usually work harder than editors. and are perhaps less pompous as a result.
I want to come back to your book, Rajdeep. So, 24, you said, you saw the rise of Modi. Do you think 24 election is the beginning of the end of Modi?
24 election, is it the beginning of the end of Modi? Not really.
You think he'll still survive?
No, I think BJP is still the dominant party of the era.
But can Modi be a coalition player ever? Like, he's so dabang.
No, look, he will be flexible so long as power. Mr. Modi is the ultimate power politician. When you're a power politician, and I've been in power politics for as long as he has. I mean, I've been in journalism 35 years, he's been in power politics for 40, right? Since the mid-80s. When you've been there that long, you will do whatever it takes to stay in power. If it needs to adjust to coalition politics, he's done it. I mean, what makes us think that he won't adjust to it? The strongman image is there, but the strongman image also will see you hug a Nitish Kumar and a Chandrababu Naidu when needed. So I'm very clear. Mr. Modi is, I mean, Hindutva is still now Hindutva and the BJP are the dominant parties and narratives of our time.
Do you think 24 is not like an ideological hit or blow to Hindutva?
I call it in the book an interval. India has pressed the pause button because you've had such a turbulent decade that you want a breather from the kind of legislation that took place between 2019 and 24, whether it's CAA, whether it's Article 370 being removed. All of that led to some element of confrontation and tumult in society. COVID created a new kind of crisis. The farmers' agitation created another sort of challenge for governments. You've had governments being toppled. In Maharashtra is a prime example. Chief ministers swearing in at 7 a.m. in the morning. It's been a very, very turbulent 5 years. And I think the voter in his or her own quiet way has pressed a bit of the pause button and said, look, enough of this bruisingly polarizing politics. Can we take a bit of a break and maybe look to become more consensus builders, more coalition builders? I'll give you an example of that's happened. Look at the Waqf Board bill. 5 years ago, I think they would have rammed
Just
it through.
bulldozed
Just
through
bulldozed it through.
Yeah.
In day one, session one, laga do. Now you have to work with the parliamentary system in some way. It may still go through, but you've at least got to work through it, right? Because you know there could be opposition from within your coalition partners, possibly. So I think that's the small change that it's
I think when that bill went to the JPC, it was so bizarre and nice to watch almost. For
because
Parliament to be
but
working.
that is part of parliamentary procedure, right? Parliamentary procedure is built on select committees. It's built on standing.
Yeah.
It's built on standing committees. It's built on sending bills for consultation. The number of bills which were sent to select or standing committees, I think in Manmohan Singh's time is more than 60 or 65%. It's down to 10 or 11% now. That's ridiculous, right? Parliament has been reduced to a notice board between 2019 and 24. Suddenly you decide one day to pass the farmers' law, right, at the height of COVID.
In fact, now nobody's been pretending MPs read bills. The time of passing is so short. It's
that's
minutes.
right. So you just push, you're ramming through bill after bill. Parliament's been reduced to a notice board. The judiciary, dare one say, has faced serious challenges. And, that's the one institution I've stayed away from. I don't know enough, but I can see what's happening.
You're being very taciturn, Najib.
No,
You
I
want to
can
be
see
stronger
not
because
no.
the judiciary is
I-
responsible
yeah,
for
but
upholding our democracy.
Absolutely, but I believe there are people far more equipped than me to write about that.
Right.
Those who are daily practitioners within the judiciary should be writing.
But do you think it's not the job of journalists to hold the judiciary to
No,
account
of course
of
it
their
is.
power, right?
Of course it is. Of course it is. I'm just saying that within my book's narrative, I guess I don't emphasize that much as I should have. I think there are, I should have looked at perhaps on hindsight more closely the role of the Election Commission and the role of the judiciary. Maybe that's a future book.
Right.
But I thought I should look at institutions that I've been tracking more closely, particularly enforcement agencies, looking at the manner in which they've played a role. But you're right, the judiciary as well. I mean, a lot of the plight that at times democracy finds itself in terms of not ensuring a level playing field is because the judiciary hasn't really pushed for constitutional values to be respected. I mean, even in Article 370, the manner in which Kashmiris were arrested at the time, thrown into jail. I mean, whatever happened to...
Or the spate of mosque surveys now.
Yeah,
From the judiciary.
that one observation from Justice Chandrachud on observing the character of a monument has allowed a lot of lower courts to open the doors for this kind of potential religious conflict. But even on Article 370, when Kashmiri activists were arrested, where was the right to life and liberty? Why didn't you decide on habeas corpus petitions speedily? These are questions the judiciary has to answer. Why did it take you so long to ensure, and it's only now happening, that the PMLA, the Prevention of Money Laundering Act, doesn't become a weapon. It's been weaponized effectively to put your opponents in jail. Now there are some restrictions being brought in by Justice Gawai's recent judgment, but you need a full review. That review is still pending in the court of PMLA. These are issues. I mean, I could raise a lot of these. I could have, as I said, in hindsight, have a separate chapter on it. But I've raised it at various times in the book about, the failure of the judiciary, the failure of the Election Commission. Again, maybe it needs more amplification. But these are real issues of our times. And I think the institutional enfeeblement of institutions being so enfeebled, which were supposed to be checks and balances, makes our democracy weaker at the end of the day. There's a democracy deficit as a result. But do we as Indian citizens value democracy enough? It's a question I ask myself.
You don't think so? You don't think Indians value democracy? Because you started with the 77 election, which is this...
Yeah, but I think it's...
fairy tale of democratic voting.
I think there's a lot of cynicism out there. People कहते हैं एक नेता दूसरे पार्टी में चला जाएगा, यहाँ से वहाँ चला जाएगा. What difference? 1/3 of Maharashtra's MLAs have been in more than one party over the last 10 years. So as a voter, I feel cheated. And then I eventually say,
the names of the parties in Maharashtra are so confusing. I mean, it's...
They're symbols. I mean, think of it. One day I've got a clock symbol, next day a tutari, which is the real NCP. Someone's got bow and arrow, someone's got mashal. Maharashtra, and the irony again, since you started by saying go back in time, when I joined journalism, I remember an old journalist in Mumbai in Times India told me, Rajdeep, if you want to do politics, leave Mumbai, go to Delhi. I said, why? He said, Mumbai mein to kuch politics mein nahi hota. It's all within the Congress. They fight each other and resolve it there. That's all that will happen. Look at how it's been so turbulent over the last 5 years. So, things have changed more dramatically than I imagined, and some for the worse, very little for the better.
In the book, you say, since you're talking about the opposition, you say you change your mind on Rahul Gandhi.
No, I've changed I've changed my mind on Rahul Gandhi. Let's get this clear. I've changed my mind on Rahul Gandhi to the extent of saying that I think Rahul Gandhi showed some tenacity between 2019 and 24. The Bharat Jodo Yatra being one part of it. That he was ready to take the battle into the opponent's ground as an opposition leader should at a time when a lot of people were giving up. But I sometimes think Rahul Gandhi is more some kind of a political philosopher, ideologue, and not a strategist.
Right.
And not a power politician. And you need to be a power politician. Or if you're not, someone else in your party needs to be. Right? It's one thing to be a philosopher,
What do you mean not a
ideologue.
power? He's not hungry for power.
Yeah, he's not willing to do what it takes to get power or retain power.
Which is everything. Like just throw everything to the wind. Sam, dam, done the bid.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, look, let me give you a cricketing analogy, my great passion. When Virat Kohli became this big star of Indian cricket, he changed Indian cricket. How? He's made every Indian cricketer more conscious than ever before about physical fitness. And therefore, the competitive levels that he's taken Indian cricket, every young kid today has to be hugely fit before anything else. My father's generation, they would have rest day and eat tandoori chicken on the rest day in Moti Mahal.
Right.
That's not going to happen to today's cricketers. So you made the sport more competitive. Modi Shah, like them or not, have made politics hugely competitive.
Right.
They will take no prisoners. They will delay an election if they need to. They will, engineer defections. They will do whatever it takes to win power. Now, if you're going to say power is poison, as a leader of India's ultimate power party, the Congress, there's an element of confusion there. If I'm a Congress leader, right? So it's good to have your ideological convictions. You have every right to them. Good luck to you if you can make the Congress more ideological. But you're also going to have to make it more organizationally robust. You're going to have a strategy. You're going to have to ensure that you have a plan A, B, C, like the other side has. Look, the BJP course corrected in Maharashtra after their Lok Sabha defeat. The Congress didn't. The Congress in Haryana took the election for granted. The BJP fought what to all of us appeared a losing election till the very end. That's what politics is.
Do you ever want to think about joining politics like your wife?
Look, even if I even if I wanted to, by her experience, look, each individual has their choices. So
Right.
I respect her choice. That's her choice. I leave it to her to decide what she did. I don't have that kind of thick skin. I don't have the ability to sort of be able to tough it out. Politics is tough.
Politics.
It's not easy. Wherever you are in politics, once you're in public life, it's not easy.
I think sometimes I see people say politicians are stupid and all. I'm like, no.
Yeah,
dude,
no, they're not.
very
No, they work
intelligent,
very hard.
hardworking people.
Very
Whatever
hardworking.
you might think of them morally.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They're remarkably hardworking people. They have no sense of privacy.
Yeah.
People can walk in and out of their house. They've got, and if they're Lok Sabha, then you've got all your constituents will come, put various demands. I have strong views on politics, and but that doesn't necessarily make me a good politician. In weaker moments, I've thought about it. Why should I only be one of them? And then I said no.
Right.
And I don't want to lose the things I treasure. I
Right.
treasure my privacy. I treasure my occasional Sunday afternoon at my Bombay Gymkhana watching cricket.
Right.
I treasure, sitting with friends, having a drink or just chatting about life. I have spaces that are my own. And I fear if I were to be a serious politician, I would lose all of that. Plus, honestly, no political figure has really inspired me enough to say, I want to be with you. Then I have to start my own party, which, God, I don't have that kind of money to start a party.
No politician today, like you feel, like inspired is a big word, but you feel that they're doing good work?
No, there are individuals. There are lots of our MPs who are very hardworking MPs. And they work very hard at their constituencies. Good luck to them, right?
What if I asked you, like history, like in history, if you could go back and join a party is there a leader that inspired you? Like if you could put yourself back in 1950s,
No, I can't think of anyone. I mean, if you go back in time, we could, but honestly, I haven't seen, I don't want to speak about politicians before my era,
Right.
because I've only read about them. But the ones seen over the last 35 years, there's no one who I've sort of instinctively thought, I want to join hands with him and or her and
Change
take
the
it
country, yeah.
and change the country. The country is not going to get changed so easily. Let's realize. You see, journalists have this horrible habit, like the editors, thinking they can run the country. We can't.
Right.
So let's be on the ground. Do what we do, which is journalism, as far as possible. But look, the only interviewee that I really was taken up by was Nelson Mandela.
Right.
I mean, it was, there was something special. And I think there was that moral fervor, which was the way he lived his life. So, but we don't have Nelson Mandelas in this country. And I think power politics has taken over to the point where it's corroded all your ideological fervor. When I was growing up, since you're talking, I used to read about politicians like Mrinal Gore. She was the Paniwali Bai of Mumbai. She was out there, social activist, socialist.
Who's she?
She was, Mrinal Gore was a MLA, several times MLA from Goregaon in Mumbai, socialist leader, part of the Janata Party but she was a firebrand.
Right.
I met her many years later, interviewed her when she was older, but the fire was still there. But she worked among the people. She was a Paniwali Bai because her task was to ensure that everyone got water in her town, in her area. Now there's a
It would be impossible to find a Paniwali Bai who's a politician, name politician.
Yeah, and the change in those days, your MLAs and councillors in Mumbai, for example, could be the likes of Mrinal Gore or an Ahilya Rangnekar, or even some of the BJP leaders of that time, Jayawanti Ben Mehta. All of them were rooted to the ground. Now you've got real estate speculators, guys with tons of money, which you can see, and they've taken over city politics in many of the cities like Mumbai. So I've seen that transition of politicians who seemed committed to their parties, their values, their constituents, to now to politicians who only really care about themselves, about the chair, about staying in power at all costs, and completely at times are disconnected even from their constituents and from their parties, so they can switch sides the moment things go against them. And look at it, Maharashtra has rewarded all the defectors. Every defector.
That's the weird, that's an inexplicable thing, right?
Well, I guess that's because voters have become cynical. They're transactional. What can I get out of this guy being in power? If I feel this guy can in power deliver for me my certain basic needs, whether it's a nursery admission at one level or getting the drain ready, I'll vote for him. Forget what his moral. I'm not here to give any character certificates to anyone, is what the voter thinks today. So that's the way, that's changed the nature of politics in this country. And that it almost makes you depressed. So when you spoke of retirement, I don't think I'll ever retire from sort of, observing what I see around me. But sometimes it is wearing to see politics getting degraded and the quality of people in public life getting degraded so sharply.
On that very cheery note, Rajdeep.
Let me say it, since I think it's important for people to feel optimistic as well. I have this one chapter called Stories of Hope.
Yeah.
Democracy Zinda Hai. I mean, there are stories also like Sanjana Jatav, 26-year-old. Some of Scroll has featured some of them, I think, in your various profiles. Yeah. Sanjana Jatav, 26-year-old, Dalit mother of two, virtually crowdsourced her way or got support from various people, used Instagram intelligently and defeated in the Chief Minister of Rajasthan's constituency a formidable candidate. There are others, Rajkumar Rohat, this sort of biker tribal leader, quite an impressive figure in his own ways out there. So I think India is seeing that as well. I think at panchayat levels, we're seeing a lot of new leaders emerging. We are a 50-50 country. So
I think there's a Mark Twain quote, everything that you can say about India, the opposite is also true. Right?
Absolutely. So, I don't want to leave all your viewers at Scroll depressed. My last line in the book is Fir Subah Hogi. There is... there's always Sahir Ludhianvi you can always turn to a bit of poetry when you feel depressed. And I do hope that maybe the next generation will learn from the mistakes of the present. But at the moment, there is a democracy deficit that still stares at us. And I think if you enlightened citizens, especially in the middle class, should be concerned about that and be looking for genuine electoral reform, not just some piecemeal, proportional representation, right to recall. Think of dramatic things that can really change the way elected leaders interact with their constituents, even the size of constituencies. Imagine 30 lakhs is the size of a Bangalore North constituency. Or
It's meaningless almost.
meaningless. I mean, what does how can an MP deliver? So there are lots
How can anyone even place any check on him?
Yeah,
It's
so there's
like
no
a
accountability.
mini
So,
country.
yeah, so I mean, a lot of this needs to change, and hopefully it will one day.
If you like what you saw and you want to keep media free and fair, I would urge you to go to scroll.in/contribute and pay so that you can keep media free in our country and keep real media and real reporting and real journalism alive. Thank you so much, Rajdeep.
Thanks, Shoaib.
This was a great conversation. This is his book. See you on the other side.